lunch here for a second.
Well, Barney, I bet your president is a ball of fire up there. She was wonderful.
Oh, you got the swag bag came?
No, I was saying your president.
Oh yeah, she's good. Yeah, we like her.
She was wonderful. Wow.
She's spoke in so many ways to the mission of UVU in a lot of ways when she came on as president, and she is the Energizer Bunny as well.
I imagine so. I bet you just can't keep up with her. Yeah.
It's true. It's some work to keep up with her, but you know, she pushes herself, and she's pushed the institution in a lot of really meaningful ways over the last couple of years. So
she's been in about a year.
She's been in for 2.5 years.
2.5. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Yep. Like I said, when she did her campus presentation, when we were with the finalists, it just, you know, as someone who's done this, she has the trio heart deep down, and it came through to me. You know what I mean when I say that, and it came through to me during that presentation. And then there was a period of time she was named president in like late April, early May, but she wasn't able to join UVU until September, and that's when she had to wrap up she was over Microsoft operations for all of Southeast Asia in 12 different countries. So it took 3 months to wrap up her responsibilities with Microsoft. And during that time, that's when our university marketing department went back to film that footage for the video. And when I saw the video, I'm like, yep, it certainly rang true. So it actually, the first time I watched it, I've seen it a million times at this point, but the first time I watched it, it certainly brought a couple of tears to my eyes, because like I say, I could see our trio students in her. I could see the work we've been doing for so long in her. And so that's cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
But yeah, ball of fire is a good assessment too.
I'm surprised she probably is getting a handful of people jogging with her.
Yeah, she runs. I don't know where that kind of energy comes from. I really don't. She takes very good care of herself or something. So all right, let's get started. Thank you all for rejoining us today. Again, I appreciate your time and your little extra effort. So here's what's happened since last we met. I took the lists and our conversation and what I heard and what we talked about at the end of our last meeting. Hang on just a second. Let me find that set of notes, because I closed it. And when we talked last time, we kind of talked about 5 themes: communication, networking, alumni, metrics and research, and then professional development. And if you'll all kind of remember, that's where most of the conversation landed. The one thing that struck me this morning during Paul and Marilyn's presentation was, and this is a question I have for the group because I honestly can't remember and don't know, is do we have a policy committee? That was the one piece that to me feels missing here. But I know we've kind of had an unofficial policy group, and it's whoever signs up to go to policy becomes the policy group for that year. But do we, I don't remember us having an official like committee or something like that. Does anybody know?
I've never seen it. I mean, Rachel, sorry.
Well, Chip Sharp is our government relations chair. So we do have a chair for the government relations for Utah who serves on the regional government relations, but he's been really ill. He actually got COVID, so he sadly was in and out of the hospital with that. No. He's recovering, which is great, but
that's good.
So he's had kind of a really hard year, and also wasn't able to do a lot with policy or their government relations. So I don't know that we have a committee, although it is set up to have a committee because we have a chair. I just don't know if it's really gone past the chair being a representative on the regional committee.
Well, and maybe that kind of solves our problem that way, or at least what I'm thinking. I think it you know,
have already in place.
Yeah, we've got a potential structure there.
Yeah.
I think, you know, how do we support that both the chair and forming a committee to kind of do that work every year in the same way we have a conference committee or all the other committees, scholarship committee, all the other committees that we have too. And I think maybe that's just something we just need to take. I'd forgotten. Thank you for that clarification, because I'd forgotten about that particular role. So, okay, well, that helps answer my question in some ways too that I had at the bottom. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this a little
Barney,
bit. Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I do think that definitely could be expanded. When he was talking about what they had done in Colorado in making a Colorado policy, that's a lot what I've been trying to like encourage states to do with Trio Day or with, just as my regional priorities. And it's happening differently at different states, but I think that, expanding that position and or the responsibilities of that position, I think could really, I don't know, reach those goals too.
Well, and I think, because am I wrong? Trio Day is like the 10th of February, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it's right around there. I think it's February 8th, but it was on a Sunday this year.
It's the last Saturday of February.
The last Saturday of February. Okay.
Yep.
So, and I think now at this point, because for me at least, everything's starting to blur together. So I don't know where things have been talked about at this point. But at some point yesterday, we talked about trying to resurrect the work of Trio Day that we used to do and share that load in some ways. And so, I'm wondering if we expand here. Let me go through this. Let's put a pin in that and keep that on our brain as we think through this. And I know there's a place that goes in here, and maybe you can help me think through where that is. So let me share my screen. And kind of walk you through this a little bit. So if I was that, I would be right there. Share. I don't know why it insists on shrinking everything why do you do this? Oh, well, never mind. All right, you're gonna have to shout out if you want to talk to me, because I can barely see all of you because you're so tiny on the screen. So what I tried to do was consolidate what we heard yesterday into some essentially broad objectives under each of the themed areas, and then some kind of tasks. I tried to make it so that it wasn't too onerous up front. Like, I don't want people who want to seek this out to feel like they've got to change the world in a 1-year period. You know what I mean? And I know I have a tendency to just feel overwhelmed from time to time to do that. So let me walk you through this here on the left-hand, in this left-hand column, and I'll make this a little bit bigger, so hopefully it'll be easier for you to see on your screens. The theme of communication, and then I just kind of fleshed out some broad objectives. So develop consistent and cohesive messaging for all Trio programs. Understand and leverage timing regarding messaging. So Trio Day is an example of that. If we wanted to leverage timing of that, how do we craft a message around something like that? And then clarify expectation and roles regarding communication for all members. So, is there, in the old school 3,000 years ago kind of thing, there used to be these things called phone trees. There are people of a certain age who remembers what a phone tree is. Some of you probably don't, though. But it's who do we form some kind of unit to make sure that we're echoing the communication where we do, or that somebody's responsible for getting it to a particular area or region or set of programs or something like that. Under networking, mapping our impact in Utah, which is where we're at and what we're doing, and then mapping our influence in Utah, which is who we're interacting with in the bigger space, what organizations, what school districts, what our influence is in that, and then leveraging the stakeholders related to both of those efforts in Utah, and that's under networking. We keep going down here. Alumni. Establish an effective alumni association, understand and facilitate tracking for reporting purposes. So trying to tie that tracking piece, and I know we talked about that yesterday in terms of FERPA and all of that, but I know there's a way through that too. It may be clunky initially, but I think there's a way for us to start to figure out how to track and identify our alumni, at least at our institutions, and then find ways to plug alumni voices into the broader conversation for something like Trio Day or a conference, or, you know, maybe we've got an alumni who's done a really amazing, I don't know, inventive kind of business plan or something that could inform Trio, and we could have them train at a conference or something like that, so that we are amplifying those voices too, and making sure that when we have people like our you know, our Trio Achievers or something, that we're also helping amplify their voices in some ways too, not just to support Trio, but also to support them in whatever their endeavors are as well. And then the next is metrics and research. So consistently measure Utah's or Trio's impact in Utah. So we talked about this a bit. This is the, you know, we know what we do and where we do it and how much we spend to do it. This is to try and answer the so what question. So, you know, our graduation rate is 63%. Well, that's great measured against what the president and Paul and Marilyn were talking about. Measured against what? And that was, I saw that piece in Paul and Marilyn's presentation. Like, if the statewide graduation average is 50% and we're getting 60% out of our SSS programs, for example, then that's a huge talking point for a benefit that I think legislators need to hear, our community partners need to hear as well. And then finally, down here in professional development, strengths-based approach to developing leadership and membership-focused deployment of professional development. So asking people what they want and what they need, and then also building on the strengths that we have in here too, because there are tons of people in here that do amazing work, and they should be training the rest of us on how to do that too, and finding ways to give. And that's a good, you know, that's a good career builder, resume builder kind of thing. To conference presentations go a long ways for something like that. And so, and then this last one, a consistent focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion and skill development in those areas as we talk about a variety of underrepresented and underserved populations in Utah. And beyond in some ways or another. And that speaks to one of the comments, I hope it speaks to one of the comments that Kyle had as well, in terms of, you know, how are we taking up voices of color, and how are we taking up different sexualities and genders and all of that in our work too, because it does intersect, you know, it all relates in some ways. And as someone who teaches in our graduate school, teaches a class on diversity, equity, inclusion in higher education and UVU's education graduate program, it is a skill set that is lacking. I will just say that in myself too. And I've done the work for years and years and years. And it's something that I think we all, you know, could use constant kind of, we can be better at this every single day, and we're never going to reach perfection in this, but how do we help folks, bring folks along to be better at that work? So those are the broad themes and objectives. Feedback on that. And I will unshare so I can actually see your faces again.
Arnie, could you drop this document?
Yeah, let me drop it in there so that you can see it up close. If I was that document, where would I be?
I love it, Barney. I love the way that you laid it out. I'm a really, I don't know, visual person. I'm kind of linear in my thinking. So the way you put it together in a table, just, it makes a lot of sense to me. And anyway, I like the look of it, and I like the representation of the conversations we've had. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me get this clear. Come with me, little friend. No, I don't want to just send it to Jessica Daly. I want to send it to everybody. Thank you. Oh, did that work?
I love listening to you work through things like that. I do that in my office, and I swear my students think I'm crazy, probably.
But I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that as well. Thank you for that voice of solidarity, because I'm constantly pretty much yelling at my computer all day long, so, especially in the COVID era. It's all I do is yell at the computer.
Mhm.
So. Did that make that into the chat? I think I did it correctly. Can someone look in the chat and see if it came? Oh, no, it says, I don't know what network disconnect means, but let me do this. There we go. Hello, my computer. And then it's,
Janet, I do that too. Just when I'm working with a student, I'm like, okay, I gotta go here. Let me do this sec. Let me pull this up,
talk myself through this.
verbalize it all.
I call my computer a brat all the time.
That's
You
that.
brat. And I'm pretty sure the students think I'm talking to them.
Click to retry. It won't let it come there. Oh, it might be too big. Is it too big? Anybody speak computer when it says network disconnect? No, I'm not looking at you for that answer, Janet, because
Is it network disconnect with your, or is it saved like in
it says it in the
OneDrive or?
in the little box in the chat where it's got the file there, but it just says it just says network disconnect. And when I go and then I click to retry, and then it won't find it. Then it says file path. Well, it's the file, it's where it is. I don't know. Here's what I'm gonna do. I am gonna go, let's see. Sorry, folks. Try one more time. Yeah.
If you just want to email it to me, Barney, and I'll work on it while you work.
Okay.
Go
Or
on.
if you could just email, yeah, let me do that. Hang on. Thank you, Paul.
You bet.
See, this is why we have Paul, because he just looks at me and says, I don't know. Yeah.
I appreciate the kind words. I was, especially from yesterday. I was talking, but then realized I was muted. So, but
Okay, it's on its way, Paul. And even if we could just email it to this group, I don't know. You try. I don't know.
Yeah.
So let me move this back over and come back to here. So other feedback on the themes. And now my question that becomes, where do we work in governmental relations in that? Or do we? Or do we just start doing what we say we're going to do in the broader plan?
Well, I mean,
Barney, this is Keith.
Thank
here. With the Thayer's presentation, I think similar to Janet, I was doing lots of screenshots, because I don't want to wait for the recording and stuff like that. But they had some really, I thought, solid suggestions. One of those was, we need to take our data that we report on APRs, but it needs to be converted into and we have the examples of how they did that.
Mhm.
So the president of the university can see that, and that it's speaking the same language they are. So that's something that I think is really important. The other thing is, if we want to be more effective on the committees and organizations at the state level, similar to what we do at policy for the federal government, that needs, whether it's part of Trio Day or whatever, but that really, I think, needs to be done in an intentional way, that our state legislators need to know us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and it's easy just to say that, I realize that, but I've noticed, like down here in Saratoga Springs, there's this Jake Anderberg or something, and he's really good. He's a senator, I don't know what he is, but he represents my district at the state. And he's really involved. He's sending stuff. And I thought, Keith, he would listen if somebody talked to him. I think there's a lot of people like that who are just, could really become advocates for us, but they don't know. And we've never really taken time to. So I think that there should be something in as far as working with our state government officials in an intentional way.
And I do think that I agree. And I think they need to know A, what we're doing, and B, I think wherever we can, we need to find a way to try and recruit them to help us say at federal policy. What would it mean to have a quick note from our state legislator go to Senator Lee or Senator Hatch or Representative Curtis to just say, this is I'm at Utah Legislature. This is happening in our community. This is meaningful. I'm supportive of this. I urge you to be supportive of it as well. I think
I
that's,
think so.
I think there's a way to dovetail that, but I think there needs to be intentionality about it too. Does that mean we need a governmental relations theme as part of this? What do you all think?
Mine is yes, but
Okay.
that's just me in this moment of saying that
Yeah, I would think that would fit under communications too.
Yeah, and that was what I was struggling with, especially as I was listening to the Thayers as well, because it's interlocked with both with communications and networking.
Yeah. Mhm. And
me
professional development, honestly, because I would love people like Chip to be able to educate the rest of us on how to build those relationships. One thing that I love that Paul and Marilyn said too was that they have regular meetings in their state. I forgot what they called it, but it was the Board of Education, the higher education, and the local government leaders were all getting together, or the legislators were getting together once in a while to, do whatever they do. But I'd
Right.
like to see that happen for our state too, and our counties, however that works.
Right, and I think so I have a question then around that, because there is a place where there's definitely an avenue for work to be done, but one that's already been somewhat effective for us at UVU. And I know they exist, I just don't know how they exist or if it's working. Do you have K-16 alliances tied to your institutions that you know of? I know, and I may have mentioned this, I know we at UVU have one alliance with MTech, with UVU, and then the districts in our service region. So Alpine, Nebo, Provo, Wasatch, North Summit, and South Summit school districts. And we meet in fact, I got a meeting with them next month, and I sit on that space here. And I sit in that space, and I'm always seeing the way TRIO and Gear Up and programs like ours are boundary spanning in this space. And I'm just wondering, do y'all have that? Is it working? Is it not working? I know SUU, well, nobody's here from SUU, so I don't know. I know SUU's president has talked about their relationship with the technology college in Cedar City too, and doing similar things to what we're doing here. Does anybody else have anything like that?
I know that USU has some strong collaborations across the state, just being the land grant university that it is, but it's not something that I know that TRIO has a voice in. Anthony might have more insight into that though.
Honestly, I don't.
Like I say, I was just curious.
Statewide campuses, but that's USU,
Right. I was just curious if that was happening elsewhere, or I know ours is touted as being pretty effective at UVU, and so that was just one of the avenues I was thinking of. The other being,
Barney, I think it's a fairly new initiative. Well, at least at Snow College, it's just started. And we have someone like your position overseeing it from Snow College. But that's a thought. Yeah, that's got me thinking about how I could visit with them and see if I can sit on that
Right.
monthly meeting.
Well, and we here at Weber, we have a meeting every month with our districts that all of our pre-college programs serve. So we have some superintendents that attend that and some assistant superintendents. So we have that meeting once a month, but we don't have like an alliance or anything that I'm aware of.
and that's and maybe it's just different versions of similar things going on that may be called something different. But I obviously think that there's room at the state level to do this, but I think there's room at our institutional regional levels too. And I don't know, and this is me probably getting 12 years down the road and at a 77,000 foot level, but I think there's a way to leverage all of that in some ways too that supports all of our, because I think it's useful, I know it's been practically useful for, technically and practically useful for me to be on our K-16 Alliance, because one of the things that we had to do was broker MOUs to get free and reduced lunch lists from the superintendents. And I went to one meeting, I got a chance to explain TRIO and Gear Up, because we got it for both of them in that meeting, and was able to answer superintendent's questions, talk through stuff like that. Anyways, that's the kind of thing where that can be both technically useful, but those technical moments provide opportunities, like Paul said, don't miss an opportunity to talk about what these programs are doing in your areas too.
So Barney, with the K-16 Alliance, is that, you mentioned school superintendents, is that counselors? Who attends that from the different school districts?
There's an executive, so in ours, there's an executive council, which is President Tuminez, President Christensen from MTech, I think there's 6 superintendents.
Okay.
It also includes our provost. It includes a vice president. Well, it includes the MTech's version of their enrollment management officer. It includes, and then it has some committee folks. So the dean of our School of Education sits on there to do professional development in the K-12 system. Our associate provost for community outreach and economic development, that's developing all the pathway programs between the two institutions, sits on that. I sit on that as the K-16 Alliance. It's because we're in all the schools essentially in all of our programs, and that's the bridging capital that we have there too. And that's about it on the main, but then there are committees. There's a professional development committee, there's a CTE committee that also do work on the ground, like working group kinds of things too, that are a part of that as well.
But did the inception of that committee, Barney, was it UVU or was it the community? I mean, where did it start?
I think it was encouraged. I think it started at the state level, honestly. I think what they were trying to do was figure out what the relationship is between our colleges and universities and their closely neighboring technical colleges. And I think that's where and the school districts as well. But again, it's mission-based in some ways too. It makes a lot of sense for, say, UVU to do something like that. It doesn't make as much, I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, but the University of Utah has a different mission because it being the flagship and the institution in the state with a much broader kind of footprint, impact, whatever you want to call it. So that looks different in Salt Lake, and it may be more Salt Lake Community College that would fill that role in Salt Lake County. I don't, again, but I think it came out of some Board of Regency kind of, hey, why don't you guys get together and figure some stuff out in your neighborhood kind of thing.
But it was relatively recent. Is this like I'm hearing with the last few years, 5 or 6 years?
We've had ours going for 5, 6, 7 years, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I say, it's worked in our region, and it's been a really good tool in our area to get folks in the same place. That's where we suddenly can meaningfully transfer hours earned at MTech into credit hours at UVU and have that count and have it meaningfully transfer, and not just say, oh, you did 700 hours. I'm just going to make stuff up. You did 700 hours in automotive technology at MTech. Great. You can transfer that over and you can get, 15 credit hours of electives that nobody needs. Right. And so rather than doing that, it's saying, no, we're going to put a little of that in your math. We're going to put a little of that in your major. But trying to make it meaningfully count towards an associate's degree at UVU or an AAS degree at UVU or a certificate at UVU. And that's, I think, really helpful for low-income first-generation folks to have that flexibility in our neighborhood too. And so, like I say, that may be a bit off topic in terms of where we're at, but the other thing that came up yesterday was the Utah College Access Network. And I think whatever that reformulation, I think we talked about this, Anthony, yesterday, that reformulation looks like in this new higher ed environment in Utah, I think we have a really golden opportunity to try and get in to
Right.
wherever that's going.
Yeah,
Because I think what's happening between MTech and UVU with the new higher ed structure in Utah is going to happen statewide.
Mhm. This is, I found my, my communications with Melanie Heath, pardon me, and I didn't follow up on that. Yesterday, I got my second dose of vaccine, and it really hit me yesterday, so I kind of went to bed and haven't done anything since. But I have that information, so I'm going to reach out to her and find out what's going on with Canada.
Right, and just even
Yeah.
a check-in, because I reached out to Melanie and hadn't heard anything about a month and a half ago with a similar question too. But I hadn't heard anything back yet. And I've just made the assumption at this point that everything at what was USHE is just getting retooled at this point. And it's just kind of blown up all the committee structures and everything. You know, we went from there used to be 8 or 10 regions. Now we have 16 to 18 regions because they had to combine the two boards, all of whom are new for the most part. So, you know, and now they're not regions, they're commissioners. And I I just think it's, you know, and
Barney?
yeah.
Sorry, you've referenced a couple times about what's happening at USHE, but I have no idea what's happening up
Okay.
there. Can you give us
Yeah,
some
I'll tell you
history
what
on that?
happened. So,
Okay.
kind of at the end of what year are we in? We're in 2021. I want to say in 2019 and 2020, the legislature took a really hard look at our technical college system. So MTech, Uinta Basin Technology, all of the technical colleges that are offering kind of certificate programs, short-term training programs all over the state. And they looked at USHE, which was all the higher education institutions, and they saw a lot of duplication. So, you know, two you know, executive bodies, and so the legislature, I believe, kind of told both organizations, you need to find a way to come together and make one organization for higher education in Utah. And so that wasn't a political landmine at all. It was not bumpy at all. It was interesting to watch. It came together in some ways. When the last commissioner of higher education stepped away, Dave Buehler stepped away, they appointed Wilson Hume, who is the current commissioner, but he was interim commissioner, and he was charged with trying to get these two organizations to integrate together into one big. And so what it did was it did create a bigger kind of board of higher education in Utah, which has like 15 members. Well, 14, something like that, 7 of which kind of represent the interests of the technical colleges, 7 of which represent the interests of the colleges of universities, and then again reframe the whole executive organization of higher education. So now there's like a vice commissioner or an assistant commissioner for technical colleges. There's one for the colleges and universities. And all of those, at least in USHE, had a structure that had been there for at least my entire career here at UVU. And so those are and so it's like, it's kind of like in some ways what happened in Price with CEU and USU. It took 2, and how do you take 2 universities and turn them into one? And that's what happened at the state level. And so, you know, who knows what happened.
And we're still figuring it out.
Exactly. And I think that's where we're at in terms of, and it's you know, it's a confusing space. It's also kind of a politically unstable space in that, not that it's volatile right now. It seems to be working well so far, but there's huge opportunity in that to rethink how we're delivering it. And I think, like I say, I think there's a great, so that's kind of what happened. That all came into effect last summer. So and right at the beginning of fall semester. So we're only however long we are into the school year, which feels like about 6 years into this school year at this point. But, you know, that's kind of what has happened there. And so I think everybody's just sorting out, you know, who's in charge of ordering pencils and who's in charge of calling the meetings at this point, and who's going to be in the meetings at this this point. And so I think it's a good time for us to try and get our foot in the door. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
No trouble. Anything else on that? So back to our bit. Can you see? Is it sharing right? It's sharing right now. Is it sharing? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So now my question kind of is in terms of, because I see the relationship with back to government relations with communication. I see the relationship with networking. I can see a relationship with alumni in some ways. And I'm wondering if I see the metrics as being part of that, the research as being part of that, the professional development as being part of that. Would it, maybe what we do is we put an appropriate, so over here on the right, these are kind of tasks. We put an appropriate task. So for example, for communication, maybe one of the roles of, let me just go down to this foundational work to kind of frame out where I'm thinking to go. So those were the themes. Before we move on to actually doing stuff, let's talk about what we're doing. So if we look in this kind of 21-22 academic year, school year coming up, and in each area I kind of said to establish a task force essentially. And I didn't say committee intentionally because I know committee has, the word committee has a relationship to the bylaws and has a relationship to the operating guidelines and puts us in a space where it will be governed in a certain way. Not that that's good or bad. I said task force, just let's get some eyes on this and kind of tease out where we're at initially and get some, just a handful of people in each of these areas just to strategically think through what this looks like. And then at some point when you know, a year or two down the road, when we get some things rolling and we know what to put in the bylaws and what to put in the operating guidelines to structure this, because we've got some, we know, because we suddenly know what we're doing, then maybe then hopefully this is loose enough that would happen. And so, for example, in communication, establish a task force, create a calendar and a timeline based on that, essentially in 21-22. But maybe we, you know, work out what is our governmental relations messaging, you know, and that's a task for the first year for the task force to work on in there. And then refine that over time. I kind of did the same thing in 21-22, form a task force for networking. The same thing, how do we leverage our networks for governmental relations? How do we do that? And maybe that's a task we put in here. I put in here, form a task force. The task force can collect and consolidate our institutional and community partners list. So we solicit everybody, say, will you send us your institutional and community partner lists out of your grants so that we can see where everybody is to try and map all of that, right? And know where the networks exist. And then identify where we got a big footprint and where we have a missing footprint and be strategic that way. But there's, you know, again, if the United Way calls a legislator in Utah County, if Bill Holderstrom, who runs United Way in Utah County, calls the Utah County legislature, they're going to listen. And he says, we support TRIO, they're going to listen. And so, and that would matter if it was in Utah County and Weber County and Washington County, that would be true as well. In terms of alumni, establish an alumni task force, identify. So I know Kyle yesterday mentioned having, you know, kind of an alumni group at the U. Maybe there's other universities that have that. I know we don't at UVU, so that's a no on our end. But also looking at what kind of Aspire is expecting in terms of alumni relations and COE is expecting. And then I know someone mentioned some strong alumni associations in other states. You know, just taking that first year to investigate and figure out who's got good alumni associations that are working and what can we, you know, as good, you know, good educators, you know, plagiarize a bit for our own needs here in Utah too. So, and then here on metrics, again, it is, you know, part of this would just automatically feed the governmental relations piece, and then professional development, you know, how do you have a conversation? How do you write a letter to your congressperson? How do you know, how do you make a phone call? What does that look like? Can we, you know, offer training in, you know, how does state government work? You know, how does the federal government work? Yeah, and I'm just throwing all of that out there, but so feedback on kind of that direction. I've tried to, and I've planned it out a little bit farther to kind of deepen things over time. But, you know, and I've also tried to make it so that one of the challenges, I'm going to try and stop sharing here for a minute again. One of the things that I've observed and experienced in working here too is we all have our day jobs to do. And we all need to be real about that. And none of us are going to be successful if we're not keeping our eye on the ball of our own programs on our own campuses to get, you know, to deliver the results there. And so I want this to not take over people's lives, but I want them to be able to say, oh, I can look at these 3 things they want to do this year, and I have a skill set to do that. And I have enough time in my day as an administrative assistant or a tutor to make a contribution to this. I wanted it to, you know, because really, again, it's the theory of many hands make light work, and sometimes, but I want people to be able to see themselves being able to make a meaningful contribution, but not be overwhelmed by that. Because again, we've all got stuff to do. In our real jobs and in our real lives. And so you know, I'm just looking for, you know, feedback on any of this that we've covered so far. And if are we heading in the right direction? Have I made a wrong turn? Do I need to just click close, do not save, and start over? Where are we at?
Barney, I think it's excellent. I mean, it's something down, and I think I'm glad. Thank you for doing that, putting something on paper for us. And I think your goals are ambitious, but they're achievable if you use grant language, you know, and stuff like that. This first year, there wasn't kind of like this year we're in right now. We'll talk about when we have our regional conference, and I guess we'll talk about on Friday, this proposal, kind of what we have a plan. We'd like to move forward with this. So I thought it was good.
Thanks, Keith.
This is I've been working on I'm chair of the strategic plan committee for the COE board, and this is really what we've been hoping to get states and regions to do, actually, what we're trying to figure out how to get them to do, and you're way ahead of the game. So I mean, really kudos. This is, I don't know, it's easy to follow. I think it's achievable.
We're really
I think
ahead of the game, because I think we're ready to do this at this point.
Yeah,
That's the
I
other
think
thing
so.
that I haven't mentioned or said, I don't think in the last couple of days too, but I think in many ways, COVID aside, because it's ruined all of our lives and we're all exhausted from it, and that's just the reality of where we're at. But I do think that we are in a position to, like, people want to find their way in, and I just sense that. I've sensed that at the last few meetings I've been to, but can't see their way in. And just see, you know, okay, you're the president, the president-elect or the secretary or the treasurer, and that's all there is to this sometimes. And I think this would, you know, what would it, if I polled all of you right now and said, who on your teams or at your institution is a good communicator, and would they be able to spend 3 or 4 hours with a group of people over a few month period, just talking through how to do this? I'm sure all of you could name somebody who and who would gladly do the work too, right? And how that would be a really meaningful contribution to, you know, us getting us all on the same page and getting our cats moving in a similar direction. So
if you can figure out how to tell me to train the rest of the states to do this, then we'll all be winning.
Well, let's pilot it first. And then, like everything else, Utah will just show the way to everyone else. I mean, you know, we're not at 170% of fair share and stuff like that because we don't have committed people. We do. That's a demonstration of the commitment. I mean, we always win all of our fair share and all of our, we do. And because our people are committed. They're committed to our students. They're committed to the state association and the region, and it matters. And so, yeah,
hey, we're at 104% right now.
We're already at 104, and it just barely started, didn't it, Jamie?
No,
Or am I late again?
What, yeah, it'll be.
I'm
in the
always late on
end
my
of
fair
June.
share stuff. So yeah,
But no, Utah's in a good spot right now.
good. See, and that's what I'm saying. It's not just, I mean, we show up with our wallets and that's a meaningful measure of this, but we all know these people. There's hearts behind those wallets too, and they really do care about what we're trying to do.
So Rachel, I think if you can identify like the people with competitiveness in their blood in those other states, and you send this example to them and look what Utah's doing, I think that might light a fire under some of them.
I think you're probably right.
I love those people.
I do too.
Me too. Me too. But yeah, I think this is spelled out really well and very easily and easy to follow. And I think you're right. I think it will inspire people who may not be ready for a position or think that all that we have is position to really get involved. And I think that's going to help us, as much as anything.
Well, and I think
So
too,
Barney, will you
sir.
present this tomorrow then?
Yeah, I probably am gonna reformat it out of this and into a PowerPoint or something like this. This is as far as I could get with it today. I probably won't get through the rest of that, but I think what I'll try and present tomorrow are the themes and objectives. And then kind of these first 2 years, the 2021-22 year and the 22-23 years, and just say, this is where we're going. We've talked about opportunities to get involved. Here's where we're going. We've tried to build bite-sized pieces for folks to find a way into this. And I intentionally also said 21-22 to give us a little time to get it all fleshed out before, say, regional meetings in October, and have kind of that be the starting point of because we'll have Samantha will come on as president. We'll have the transition change at that point. Hopefully it'll give the executive leaders at the state association some time to digest some of this, but then, and make that our marker every year of when we that's the beginning of our year. The annual regional conference is the beginning. And then this is our working group this is where we kind of figure out where we're at and where we need to go to finish out the year strong, is at our state conference. At least that's in my mind one way to take this too, and make sure that we're saying people don't know how to communicate. Well, then let's next year. And one of the things that I put in terms of professional development is what would it mean to develop? We should probably maybe do a survey as we're starting to plan each year's conference and ask people what they want. Because I will say every year when we plan, I'm like, what do you think people want? And we did it this year too. And then I'm like, I don't care what they want. This is what we're doing, is what I did. But I think I said it nicer than that, Keith. But I did say, but I think that's part of what we need to do. And if people can look at this and say, well, I'm really good. I'm a really good data geek. Let me go do my data geek stuff in the metrics, because we have those evaluator eyes and those data geek lenses, find the way in, but then also be able to look at it and say, I may be a data geek, but maybe I need to work on my networking skills, because how does this work here? And then make the conference say, okay, I don't need to hear one more thing about data. I do need to hear about how do I connect the dots in my community, right? And then we can figure out how to get the right people training. And a lot of them exist in this state. We've got great networkers. We've got great data geeks. We've got great government relations people.
And Barney, one of the things is, if people are similar to my personality, a lot of people won't volunteer. But if somebody notices that they have a strength because you work with them daily and saying, hey, would you please do this? I think that could really help getting some of these people on these task, what was it called? Task force or?
Yeah. These task force for now, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And then I think those type of personal invitations would work really well. Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, is we all know our people, and I certainly don't know everybody and I, at this point, because I'm old and tired, there are so many new faces in Trio too, that I, again, for me, it was always a good leadership development experience. I don't occupy the space I occupy without Trio preparing me to be here in some way or another. And I think we can do that with so many people on our team. So yeah, are we okay with where we're going?
Yeah,
Anybody
Brian,
have heartburn? Yes.
could we brainstorm a little bit on where this fits within the existing committee structure for like where these task force?
Okay.
So it's not just, because we have an alumni committee and we have a professional development.
Okay.
So
Well, and maybe it is that. Maybe this becomes, you know,
there isn't for communication networking or what's the metrics and research. I mean, none of
Metrics and
those fit
research,
into
yeah.
the structure of at least assigned committees.
okay.
But like the trio, and I don't think we need to revamp all the committees. But it may be easier to organize like how these task forces go. Instead of appointing someone else, at least the ones that are exactly that, like
Right.
alumni, right? Where
And I wasn't basing this off like the operating guidelines or
Right.
the current constitution.
Right.
This was just what I heard.
sure,
And that was part of why I wanted to talk about this today too, because yeah, you're right. We have an existing alumni kind of committee. We have these things. Don't we? Yeah, we
Yeah.
have these things in place. Let's use them.
well,
And
tomorrow,
and give them a charge that maybe extends a little bit farther, that says, okay, so you're going to be, you know, on the you want to be on the alumni committee. Here's what we need the alumni committee to do this year. And because we already have the structures in place, yeah, I think it fits just fine to put it there. And I can rename. Can you just tell me one more time what we have already? And
We've
I can
got
make
num-
it fit in here.
we've got you mean what committees we have?
Well, what committees we have that would relate to this?
Oh yeah, alumni and professional development we have for each of those. You know, the trio fact book, that's the closest thing to metrics and research. I mean, at least where it comes to
right.
Yeah. That's a
it
good
also
starting
fits
point.
it also fits on the networking about mapping. It isn't all the community partners though, but
You
I
know,
would-
really,
I would suggest we try to put together and add to that a communications or public relations committee with task forces for government relations, you know,
a big committee.
yeah, a big committee with the task force for government relations and for other things. That I think the fact book should actually be maybe a task force underneath that committee. That's just how my brain works. I mean, I know the fact book is metrics and stuff too, but it's also PR and communications. I think that's the main purpose of it.
Yeah.
I think metrics and research supports that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where it gets tricky too, because these are all intertwined. I mean, there's no clear boundaries sometimes. And that's one of anytime you put together strategic plans, one of the challenges is where does someone's role belong? Networking and communications are so closely aligned, but they are different things.
Mhm,
But it's really hard to say where that line is, right?
mhm.
yeah. I'm just
And
thinking
in my
that-
brain, I frame communications as what we're saying outward. Networking is who's in the room with us when we're saying it. That's how I frame it, at least in my, but they're so closely related.
tomorrow as we present this present the strategic plan, that I'm just thinking if we had actionable invitations at that point, maybe we're too close to the beginning that we need to still think that through. But that's why I was wondering if we, you know, if we said what already exists, then do we tomorrow actually get people to sign up for these task force? Do we hold off on that and put the explanation of them to directors and ask them to give us people? Do we, I mean, that's the question, is how do we translate this into the beginning of that?
I know-
Summer is I don't know about you all, but summer is a lot quieter for a lot of people, and it was
Not upward bound.
Unless you're upward bound.
upward bound. But to me, it seems like it'd be nice to have some actionable items over the summer for some people to work on in the down-ish time. I don't know what that would look like though. Maybe it's just a strategic plan flesh out task force going this summer. I don't know.
And I'm happy to keep fleshing, like I'm happy to keep fleshing. And that's where I'm at too, is I appreciate, you know, Anthony, that too, because I want this to get some legs and I want it to get some traction tomorrow. And so how do we get traction tomorrow? Do we say, I mean, and maybe so here's just, just based on your question, just my initial thoughts. Do we say we immediately want to put together people to work on these themes? If you have an interest in one of these themes, send an email, put it in a chat. If this is up your alley, if you are a data geek, Data Geeks Unite at this moment, and let us know, because there's a way and this is what we're kind of, at least at this point, expecting, for 1 year, and it's not onerous, but I also know too, having been in that position as well, that, on the last day of a conference, sometimes I suddenly go, I don't know that I need a minute with this idea to figure out if this is, you know what I mean? The other thing I was thinking is maybe there is something we can do in terms of when officially, Anthony or someone who knows, when officially do we reorganize our committees? Like if someone, let's say Leanne doesn't want to do Trio Achievers anymore,
Right.
ever again, when do we do that?
So I think we reorganize when the new president comes in, and so that would be in October. I know that when we did our last meeting in October, we talked about the committee chairs, and if everybody was still cool, we did a rearrangement then. So I think I don't know that there's a specific precedent that I'm aware, but that's just what
It seems like normally at the regional meeting.
right.
I know that's when everybody holds their hands up and says, I'm going to devote my life for another year to this. And so the timing so that's when we need to name names at that point. And so maybe part of what is Samantha on this call?
Mhm.
Yep, I'm
Yes.
here.
I'm curious, since, this is all landing on, on you all of a sudden in some ways.
No, I love this and I love advocacy. So this is exciting for me.
But so then, as you think about where you want to see things go beginning in October,
Yeah.
What does it look like to tap some people? That's the other thing I've observed, at least in my career too, and I've observed it in Trio and Keith just kind of said this too, is sometimes you literally have to tap people and say, you know what, you're smart in this, it's your turn. Can you
Yes.
take this up? And so, what are you thinking in terms of that, Samantha?
I kind of agree. I think that when you say that kind of directors know their people and that they can identify people who'd be strong in these areas, I think that's going to be an excellent path forward. Just saying that, thinking of my own staff, I know what their strengths are. So I think working with directors and I think setting this out tomorrow and telling people this is where we want to go, and having the expectation that we'll have people who want to volunteer by the fall conference, I think that's a great plan. So that makes sense to me.
What about an outreach to every project where every member of Aspire, like a Qualtrics survey or something, and it isn't which of these would you serve on for the fact, it's not, so instead of looking at, it would just be which of these do you have expertise or interest in, where everybody
Yes.
knows that everyone in Aspire is saying, oh, I have expertise and interest in any of these. Then we have a full canvassing of all people that say that they're interested in anything, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
And I think that's,
Mhm.
I agree. I was thinking of a survey sometime this summer too, or right after this, or at some point, maybe even within the next few weeks, while it might be a little fresher for folks. Just to say, yeah, what do you have interest in? Are you a data geek? Please tell us and then help us. Are you a master communicator? Do you woo? And start asking those kinds of questions. And have it not be anonymous, have it be named, and people put their name on there and say, okay, now I know, if you need somebody to run a raffle, Jamie Bayless is the one for you. And so, yeah, and then
Do a survey.
And then what does that look like, Samantha and Anthony, how do we take that, and then how do we translate that into, you know, is there then messaging or invitation? I mean, I'm serious
Mhm,
about this.
mhm.
Is there invitations from Samantha or Anthony to go out to some folks that say, you know, we appreciate your willingness to, we appreciate your expertise in, you know, being, you know, wanting to put together an alumni association and what your ideas are around that. Would you be willing to serve in that capacity? And then, you know, start tapping people that way, and then open it back up again in October to say, we've got a few people identified. We've still got a few other slots if anybody wants to show up in the fall conference. And
Yeah.
You know, Barney, and for instance, our institutional research department, I think over the summer, if we're saying this is the type of information we want to gather, I think it'd probably be some scenario type questions, but you know, within 20 minutes, please fill this out. And it gets an idea where people's interests, their passions. I think we could put together a survey. We'll run it through this committee, you know. But I think that idea that Anthony, you just came up with, I think that's really would be good to gather that. So in the fall, we'd be better prepared, you know, to invite people and stuff.
So Barney, if tomorrow when you're presenting this, if we also give the message, you know, this is part of our strategic places we'd like to go, we will be following up with the survey.
Mhm.
Everyone's going to receive where you can explain where your interests or skills are, right?
Mhm.
Is that a
yeah, I'm happy to put together something in Qualtrics to send out through our Qualtrics platform too, to send out to everybody in the state, as long as I can get the state membership list. And yeah, that's
okay?
doable.
I
Yeah.
do think this
Sorry.
might be further down the line, but I do, and falls mostly on Samantha, but I do think that in order for this to be really effective in the long run, there needs to be both like specific charges, which I think you've got lined out, but also accountability, like a time for the people who we do put into this to report both to the board and to the membership, so they know, you know, what their specific charges are, and then have a time for them to report what's going on and how it's working.
Right. I was thinking that in the fall, it would be important to have maybe those committees or subcommittees in place where we could say, you've indicated on this survey that you have these strengths or this interest in helping in this way with our strategic plan. So we would like to invite you to be a part of this committee and then move forward with that.
And
Yeah.
include time for them to meet.
Yeah.
And now that we've
Barney?
learned how to do these Zoom meetings, we can meet much easier across the state committees and
Right.
stuff.
Barney, would you be willing during this summer, when you say like this inception, would you be willing at like each month or something, if we had a general strategic plan, big picture task force as we're organizing to get ready for the fall? Like, we'll get the information from this survey, and then maybe we can just keep our heads together about, here are committees, here are things that fit, and then maybe do some rearranging so that if there's some difference, you know, for the fall, it's nice and it's as organized as it could be.
We can
right?
get it
Right. Mhm.
without a crystal ball to predict the future. which
Right. Would you
We just
be
pretend like we're
willing?
writing the grant about this perfect world that we live in that we have to execute for the next 5 years. Yeah. And I'm totally up. I'm totally game to do something like that over the summer too. And you know,
Okay.
I'm totally game to help facilitate something like this, or with everybody, whatever you guys want to do. I'm happy to try.
And then at the regional conference, choose the chairs.
Yeah.
Right.
Choose the chairs and give the charges to the committees and say, okay, you know, welcome to, and this is where, you know, I think, hello, where did your name just left my head, Price?
Samantha, Rachel,
Rachel, sorry, wow, it
Barney,
just went
how
far,
many
far away.
years?
Like, all I can see is CU, is Price. You so sorry, Rachel. I just went far, far away in my brain.
I've totally done it. It's good.
Makes me feel better.
But you know, how
Yes.
we say, well, welcome networking committee. You know, we formed the task force, check. The first thing on your list is done. You know, we need you to make a plan to collect and consolidate, and we need you to identify all the organizations. And we need that by, say, to report out at the spring meeting, the spring state meeting, to report out on that information. That would give everybody from October until March or April to get the work done. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
And we just tell them that's all you got to do this year, and then meaningfully hand that to next year's committee. And next year, we're going to have them strategize about how to maximize collaboration with partners, right? We're going to have them take what we have, you know, maybe we have this huge presence with, you know, big brothers, big sisters kind of thing. Maybe we have a lot of impact there. How do we now articulate that network in some ways that can better serve our students and serve and scratch their backs too? Have this be a shared experience too.
Yeah.
We good with that?
Yep.
Okay, so tomorrow what I'll do is I'm going to do the themes, probably the first couple of years. I'm going to say, now here's the other thing that I want to throw out there, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody. Can we, you know, towards the end of that, I'll say, you know, if you have expertise, interest, curiosity, insight in any of these ways, and you think you can fit into doing these 3 things in each of these areas, can we just say, please email, you know, Samantha and Anthony and let them know that you have an interest, and just email that way you just know right out of the gate. We've got people out of the gate who want, and we have a place for them to take that energy for the people who are quick to raise their hands.
Sure. Yeah, that kind of alacrity, let's not lose it for sure.
Okay.
You might
And
get,
then I'll say we'll do a survey over in the coming, you know, time and
and
try and
as you present it, Barney, you might get some people just in the chat box saying, I want to do this.
right. And we can say, yeah, throw it in the chat if you have interest. Just say you're interested in whatever theme it is. I mean, that's another way to do. Absolutely. Okay, as long as you all are okay with that. I also don't want, say, I'm trying to have boundaries around, you know, we're all trying to get through the day, and I don't want you to get 7,000 emails that you weren't expecting either, but it would be a lovely problem to have. That's the other thing I keep telling myself every day is this is a nice problem to have. So, okay. Anybody else have anything that, because I don't want to keep droning on. Are we feeling okay about this? Are we, you know, we good in the hood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think as long as we express tomorrow that this is, it's the beginning and
It's a draft.
Yeah, and the themes are really what came from our groups, right? So the themes are where this race is beginning, right? So yeah,
right, and that's where we want to start. And you know, we're trying to lay out where we think it's going, but best laid plans of mice and men kind of thing. And because COVID, and that's my answer to a lot of things. We just don't know what's going to happen because COVID. And so, and not just that, it's taught me a big lesson about you have very little control in the world. And so, but yeah, okay, we can do that. And you know, I'll try and build Rachel, I'll try and build in this, you know, what the accountability looks like, and I'll try and add in kind of, you know, what the timeline is in terms of reporting and expectations, just so folks know what they're biting off. I think that's only fair too. And I would rather, if I was taking up a role like that, I would rather have somebody who have hand me something that's in process or has been thought through a bit, so I don't feel like I'm starting at scratch, because that can be a really overwhelming feeling too for some of these committees where, and I know that was, like I say, that was true for me when I was Aspire president too. It just felt like I started from scratch. I didn't. I had great support and handoff and everything, but you know, trying to get your hands around it's trying to jump a train while it's in motion in some ways, but has no destination. Wow. So congratulations, Samantha, on that bright note.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I'm excited.
We're trying to develop a timetable. That's what we're trying to do. You know, what train stations are we going to? And yeah.
Awesome.
I see I'll screw up a metaphor any day. All right, everyone. It's been a pleasure spending some time with you these last couple of days too. And like I say, we'll see you tomorrow. I hope Kyle brings us with some, he's always disgustingly good at presenting. It kind of makes me sick. So I'm excited for our first presentation in the morning as well. I'm probably going to tease him a bit in his introduction, so don't be shocked.
Barney,
He
how,
does.
when was
Kyle
he,
and I have
when
an
was,
interesting, yeah, go ahead.
when was he last with Trio? Was he a speaker in Montana?
Wyoming.
Oh,
Montana,
Wyoming.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we came to Wyoming.
No, it was Montana. You're right.
Montana.
No,
yeah.
it was
It
Montana.
was Montana. Oh yeah, because we went to a microbrewery. Yeah, surprisingly enough, and I had beer and he did not.
We
He
rode
was-
on
Or
the
a
plane together.
ginger ale.
He used to always come do trainings for my ambassadors at when I was at Snow, which was what 2007, and I'm pretty sure he was in Trio then.
I remember way
those.
back attending a conference at Slick, and he presented at it, but I think he was an Upward Bound advisor or something.
He was the, what was he? I think he was the like the data specialist for Upward Bound. Was one of his first actual job in a related program was we had a Gear Up partnership grant at UVU in I want to say around 2001, and he worked their summer program, and he had just graduated from BYU and was a graphic designer with Nu Skin and completely changed his career choice after spending that summer with Gear Up and has never left since. And so then he moved into Trio. It was assessment specialist. That's what he started out as in Upward Bound and Talent Search. And then he was a Gear Up outreach advisor after that. And so, yeah, he's family. I teased him a lot that he just kind of, every time I left a position, he filled it. He was like, he just kind of stalked my career until he got tapped by the president to be the chief of staff. And then he just went right over the top, and it was, yeah, anyways. But no, I like I say, I wanted him to talk a bit about storytelling too. That's what I asked him to talk about, was how do we tell our story well? What does it mean to tell your story, especially if you're, and Kyle might weave this in, if you're from an underserved or underrepresented background, it's hard to wrap your voice around your story. And I asked him to, we're trying to figure out a way to help tell our Utah Aspire story better. So he'll land somewhere, and it'll be brilliant, and it'll be disgusting, and then I'll have to harass him more afterwards. So he's my brother from another mother. So,
Okay.
All right, everyone. It's good to see your faces. Go it's nap time for everybody. Let's all take, because you blocked
Thank
the whole
you.
day, right? Let's all take naps and have a great day, and we'll see you in the morning. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Barney. Thanks,
you, Barney.
everyone. Bye.